Welcome to Our Water, Our Health. Today, we'll learn about how water quality affects our health by talking to experts and visiting students around the state of Maryland. We need water to live, but did you ever think about how the quality of the water in nearby rivers, lakes, and oceans can affect your health? Here in Maryland, we're part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Parts of 6 states, New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia, as well as the District of Columbia, fall within the Chesapeake Bay watershed. In fact, 1,000 different streams and rivers all flow into the Chesapeake Bay. The Chesapeake Bay is vital to the region's economy, environment, and to human health. Let's check in with Dr. Beth McGee. She's the Senior Water Quality Scientist at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. She's here to tell us more about the Chesapeake Bay.
So the Chesapeake Bay is the largest estuary in the United States. An estuary is where fresh water meets salt water, so the salt water is coming from the Atlantic Ocean. Fresh water is coming from the many rivers that feed the Chesapeake Bay, including the Susquehanna and the Potomac River. It's important culturally because over 400 years ago, Captain John Smith explored the Chesapeake Bay and documented its history. So a very rich sort of cultural history here. And ecologically, it's incredibly diverse. There's more than 3,000 plants and animals that live in the Chesapeake Bay. A lot of people make their living on the bay. A lot of people recreate on the bay. So it's just a wonderful place that we have in the U.S.
Some water contaminants are man-made, such as fertilizers, pesticides, and other chemicals used in industries such as agriculture. Microscopic organisms, such as certain types of bacteria and viruses, can also contaminate water sources.
So the big sources of pollution to the Chesapeake Bay, or the main pollutants affecting the Chesapeake Bay, are nitrogen and phosphorus. These are nutrients, so they're contained in farm fertilizers, they're contained in human and animal waste. So we often use them on our fields and farms, land to make them grow, on our grass to make them grow. But the problem is when they get into the Chesapeake Bay, they also cause the plants in the bay to grow. These are single cell plants called algae that can grow into large numbers. Sometimes if you go out to the Chesapeake Bay or its rivers, you may see the water's a little discolored. That's probably an algae bloom. So that in and of itself can be a problem because some types of algae are toxic. But more importantly, it's when the algae die, they sink to the bottom of the rivers and the bay, and when they're decomposed, oxygen is used up. And so we have a huge dead zone in the bay where we don't have enough oxygen. The sources of these pollutants are sewage treatment plants, is runoff from urban areas and city streets because of people using fertilizer or even nitrogen coming in from the atmosphere. Farmland, animal feedlots, and a little bit coming from septic systems.
Here at Claggett Farm in Prince George's County, Maryland, students from Hagerstown came to learn about how different types of land use affect water quality. Students learned what runoff from different types of land use looks like and how it affects the environment. Melissa Simmons is the manager of the Claggett Farm Education Program.
So we're trying to get children to see the connection between the food that they eat and the water quality of the Chesapeake Bay. And by doing that, we're showing them sustainable farming, organic farming, so that they can understand that actually how their food is produced has a direct impact on the water quality. Whether you're using organic fertilizers or non-organic fertilizers, what are the impacts of both ways of doing it? So when you talk about runoff with kids and adults, they're like, oh yeah, I get it. When it rains, all that water goes into a creek somewhere and then it ends up into the bay eventually. But what they don't really think about is all the things that water's picking up along the way. So it could be picking up some dirt. It could be picking up some oil that dripped out of your car. It could even be taking some of that fertilizer that you just put on your garden a day ago, and it's all going down into the bay, and it's causing some major problems. So for the land use experiment, it's actually showing the kids at the end of the cycle, what does that water look like? And there's nothing more powerful than when they hold up the one cone and it's just covered in dirt and it looks really gross. And it's like, oh, I don't like that. And they're like, yeah, the critters in the bay, they don't like that either.
So the Chesapeake Bay can affect the health of people in a couple of ways. One is swimming. A lot of people like to swim in the bay, and there are certain times, especially after major rains, where a lot of pollution and bacteria runs in the Chesapeake Bay, and it's not safe to swim in. Secondly, in terms of human health impacts, I mentioned algae that can bloom because of too much nitrogen and phosphorus pollution coming into the bay. Some of those types of algae are actually toxic to humans. So those are sort of the negative aspects of experiencing the Chesapeake Bay.
In Baltimore City, Reach High Baltimore is a youth rowing club that teaches students about discipline and fitness, and also about their natural environment. Judd Anderson runs the youth program at Reach High Baltimore.
You know, we have a boathouse stuffed with boats. The docks are here, the water is here. Nobody comes to the water. You know, that's why we're going to clean the water, so that you can swim in it someday and people don't look at it and say, oh, yuck. And mostly what we're interested in is having them see the wildlife, identify herons, and egrets and ibises. We go up the Patapsco and all that, and turtles, and then have them, and the ducks, they just love watching these families of ducks and all that, and they're the ones, they don't need teaching, because they actually, wait up, because they're the ones who say, oh, those poor ducks, they're swimming through the garbage.
So one of the biggest things we talk about is water quality overall. If we don't have healthy water for our plants and our animals, we also don't have healthy water for ourselves. So honestly, it's kind of important to be interested in this, because we want to create healthy communities. And if we keep making the water more and more polluted, then we're going to be spending more and more money on those treatment plants. And we're already starting to see problems with things like endocrine disruptors and fish populations, making fish display both male and female sex traits. So if that's happening in our fish populations, later down the line, what could that mean for us?
This video is brought to you by the Maryland Department of Health and Mental Hygiene's Environmental Public Health Tracking Program and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.